Welcome to a special edition of Legends with JBL. Every sport has one, an icon that becomes a legend, that transcends the genre and transcends the generation. In boxing, they had Muhammad Ali. In basketball, they had Michael Jordan. In hockey, they had Wayne Gretzky. And in WWE, we had this man. Many claim that he is the greatest of all time. A 7-time world champion, a Royal Rumble winner, but most importantly, identified with a streak. There is only one dead man. There's only one phenom and only one Undertaker. And when you discuss the Undertaker, you have to put together the most star-studded panel in WWE history. And these three gentlemen know him better than anybody. They have all fought with him. They have all fought alongside him. And including yours truly, we have all been defeated by the Undertaker. The cerebral assassin, 13-time world champion, and now the COO of World Wrestling Entertainment. The 6-time world champion, the Rattlesnake, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Vince McMahon called him the greatest draw in sports entertainment history. And finally, the showstopper, Mr. WrestleMania, 4-time world champion, and what many have called the greatest in-ring performer of all time. Gentlemen, welcome to Undertaker Week.
It's good to be here. I usually feel really good about my career, and then after hearing his introduction and you guys, I just feel I didn't know a whole lot. Yeah. Just feel like I should probably leave now, guys. I just don't.
You topped it off with greatest in-ring performer of all time. What more do you need? He just summed it up real fast.
Well, obviously, you think about Undertaker and all. I mean, all those people that you mentioned, and he's beaten all of them. That's just.
And when you talk about that, Stone Cold, I'll start with you. You were called by Vince McMahon, and that's pretty much Bible around here. He certainly knows this business better than anyone. The greatest draw of all time. However, your career was cut short. And we want to see Stone Cold go 20, 25 years. We'd love that. As a fan, as a friend, you'd love to see that. Undertaker has done that. I can only think of guys like a Bruno Sammartino or a Lou Thesz or an Andre the Giant. Where would you rank that 25 years, going from his first match with Survivor Series, winning the title in 1991 from Hulk Hogan, to Brock Lesnar in 2015, 25 years later?
Man, I really think you got to put it at the top of the heap. Just the way, because I remember on the Undertaker way back in the days when we first started, in a couple of my first matches, I think Undertaker had about a year head start on me in the business, and to see what he'd end up turning into, and then when he was presented the Undertaker, to last this long, to go through the periods of reinventing himself, to always stay fresh, to push to the forefront, to have quality matches, to take care of that character, it just speaks volumes to work ethic, the task at hand, maintain his credibility. It was just unbelievable what the guy had done. And before I left, Taker and I were kind of beat up back in the day. Well, obviously he had a lot more in the tank. And we would kid each other, who was going to last the longest. And it was him. And he stayed some 13 some odd years after I left. And just to know the guy, to be in the ring with him, to see what kind of locker room leader or lifetime leader he was behind the scenes, it's just absolutely incredible. And the guy, I think anybody here will agree, anybody in the locker room would agree that the guy has been a class act and conducted business at just the highest level from day one.
Oh, for sure. And touching on you, because you said a lot of things, I can remember when he first came in, hearing people talk about how it was a phenomenal character. Everybody loved it, but everybody felt that it was probably going to be short-lived because there was only so much you could do with it. There was only so far you could go. And just because you touched on that, I mean, you think about the fact that it's 25 years later and it's as fresh today as it ever was. That's mind-boggling. I mean, that really is very tough to do.
And it was such a character, right? So different than a lot of things at the time. It was such this unique character, this dead guy, the whole thing. It seemed like it would be short run, but yet you go through all those iterations of what the WWE became, from that next generation, the Hogan era, to the Bret Hart time frame, to the Attitude Era, to beyond that, and he just kept morphing with those times. And that's a testament to him, because you could have given 1,000 people that same character, and not one of them would have done that. I think in anybody else's hands, that character would have failed. the testament to him is that ability to morph and change over time and to just continue to evolve and just make it better and better
still
and
take
better.
care of it.
But the total commitment, because he was all in. I mean,
for sure.
if you pitch that to someone, they might say, "Man, this is too outlandish. This isn't for me."
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, when you hang around Taker, and that's not really who he is, but it's an extension of who he is.
Yeah.
And the way he played that, dude. I remember when he first debuted. If you watch the reactions of the people there, kids were scared.
Yeah.
They were scared. I'll say this for a shoot. They were scared to death of this guy.
Oh, yeah.
And doing the sit-up and with a quick look. And
Look, and then you combine that to real life with, and you talk about full in commitment, but look, we all might have visited some establishments back in the day where when you walked in, you would see this dark, ominous, dressed in black figure
And he
with his
was,
hair down
Might have
and
been,
the black sunglasses
there, but
on,
he was
not
still
moving,
ominous, right?
not moving in the corner, and
Right.
and then grown adults were scared
Yeah.
of the man sitting in
Well,
the corner.
and again, I guess I think about, I mean, that, as you say, he's all in. And then when he came in, it was so cool. He went right to the top. I mean, in a very short amount of time, he was in the main event. Everything about him, you know, and the character and everything was, you know, it was like.
it was built that way.
It's awesome, but it's going to be short-lived because he's shooting up so fast.
It
But
has
wasn't
to
he-
burn out
But
fast.
wasn't he
Yes.
all in for all the characters? I mean, he starts with Paul Bearer. Really start with Brother Love, then he migrates right away to Paul Bearer, which, by the way, you guys shared a starting manager in Paul Bearer as well. But he starts with Paul Bearer, then he goes into the Lord of Darkness, then he goes into the American Badass, then he comes back to the Undertaker. Those gimmicks would have failed on almost anybody. All four of them would
Dude,
have.
that career suicide.
Especially full departures of a character. Like when he went to the American Badass, full-on departure. You know what I mean? In a character. That.
And then full departure back
Yeah.
to the Dead Man.
Yeah.
And you knew, I mean, hey, dude, this is different. This is totally different.
Yes.
He's still the Undertaker. He's American Badass, but it always worked for him. And that wasn't a fluke. It wasn't luck. It was, again, to me, it's all in how you present something. And there was authenticity to it. It was as real as it could get. It was a shoot to him. He was committed to that character.
Well,
All
I
in.
think- And in all of the changes, because you both know as well as I do, any guy that's done this for a long time will tell you, you switch around that many times, it's a credibility killer.
Yeah.
It's a credibility killer. Anybody will tell you that. But he somehow managed to keep as you said, an authenticity to, I guess, the original something. You know, and so that's got to tell you there was a something synonymous with all of them that he kept true to, but it was not solely defined in what I thought it was, which was that Undertaker character. It was something beyond that, if that makes sense.
But I think if you watch him come up back
Yeah.
in the days of USWA and down in WCW, you know, you can see this great athletic specimen, but all of a sudden when Vince presented him with this thing that fit, it was all over, and that's when the cash
Well,
register
how in
started
the
ringing.
world then did Jim Herd and Jim Barnett and Ole Anderson sit down and tell him that there's not money in you? I mean, you've got this huge guy. You've got this incredible athlete. He goes on for this. By the way, that was 25 years ago. He was on top when he came in the WWE. He's on top now. They missed an entire quarter century of sports
I
entertainment.
would like to go on record as saying everybody I think at this table was told that by someone at one time or another.
By some of those same people.
Well, you know what I mean? So I don't mean that to be
No,
critical
it's a
or
point.
mean, but again, there's sometimes a lot of things are said in foolishness, I think, in this line of work to maybe put you in your place. But I think at some point when he got here, I think Vince allowed him to make a lot of it his own. And that's something that I think all of us at one time or another, we've all sort of needed that, you know, where you've got to let us have a little bit of the steering wheel, because nobody knows us like we do. And I think for Undertaker, that's that core thing. He was able to keep true to it, like I said, a certain amount of himself, because the real guy he's not quite that ominous. Obviously, we've all known and laughed and joked and all that.
Yeah.
But there is a serenity and a reserved nature to the real guy.
Cool breeze.
Cool
Yeah,
handler.
but that was built to be on top, and if it's going to take too long to get there, that was going to flop. And luckily, by the time he'd already paid his dues and earned his stripes, and he knew what he was doing in the ring, had that great athletic prowess, walked the top ropes, do everything that he could, and he was so physical with his work background. He took it to the top, and there it remained.
But, you look at that and you go back to right when he first started that, the things that he did in the ring, so slow moving, and it was so unique.
You're right.
Think about this,
especially at that time going against everything, because at that time we were all starting to speed up.
Yeah, a million guys would have done that, and I don't know that any of them would have thought, oh, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that slow walk and the slow methodical movements and the, it just was counter to everything that was happening.
But, he almost didn't come here. And the reason was Paul Heyman was talking to Bruce Pritchard trying to get him a job here at WWE. And he told him, said, you got this match coming up, the Great American Bash with Lex Luger. And Undertaker, which we'll talk about in a second, was working through an injury. His hip had popped out of socket. He shouldn't even be walking his dog in the park. He decided to go out and have the match. That's the match that Vince saw. And when he saw it, he thought, here's this great big guy who can't move. And so when Undertaker first met with Vince, he thought he had a job. He goes back, gives his resignation to WCW, and now he almost is out of a job for some period. But I don't think it would have ever worked at WCW, because here they gave him the opportunity to become The Undertaker. I don't think there he would have had that opportunity.
I don't think so either. I think somebody had to conceptually think of that role and how to put that role out there and have it succeed. Like you said, it needed to be shot right to the top, and it needed to be done that way. Otherwise, it wasn't going to work. There's not a lot of guys in the business that could have done that, and Vince gets a lot of credit and a lot of bad rap for things, but I think that's where a lot of times, hit or miss, but a lot of times in this instance, he was a genius in the way he handled that character. He had this concept for this character and saw a guy that could fill that role in his mind and put it together, but it had to be handled right on both sides.
And about 95, when guys were starting to jump, you had Diesel and Razor all jumping sides. Undertaker never jumped. How devastating would it have been if he had gone to WCW in that time before the Attitude Era started?
Well, purely speculation, but Jesus, we'd have been in a real bad spot, because I personally thought when Brett, packed up his bags and went down there, I just thought, from going from the screw job, I was a big fan of Bret Hart, as a big fan of everybody here, but man, all of a sudden he was our world champion. I was thinking, man, if that guy's going, we're in trouble. I really thought we were. So the fact that everybody left had Taker gone with him, the thing about it is, the good thing is he stayed, because he continued to have the run and go up even higher. But had he left, we never would have known what would have happened to WWE, much less what would have happened to his career, because it would not have been the same for him to go back.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, and I don't know a lot about that place, but it was my understanding that certainly WCW had said things to him that much like they said to you and to you. So there was no really desire to ever go back there again. It was more about staying here and proving them wrong, much like it was with these two. And even somebody like me who was going through a bunch of stuff but wanted to, just let me go with my buddies. Even I can remember Vince saying that you won't be happy down there creatively. They won't allow you to do what I know you need to do. Which, I'll give anyone has to give Vince that, is that it's one thing he does. He, those of us, and again, there's three of them here, including yourself, he knew how to manage us, so to speak. He knew what to let us do, and gave us enough rope to be able to create what we wanted to create. I think Taker was the same way. That's for sure.
It would have been tough, because we had just a few mainstays left. It was scary to me, at least, when Diesel and Razor left, and then all of a sudden you have Bret Hart go, and you're sitting around looking around going, oh my goodness, we can't lose the dead man. Because we lose the dead man, perhaps we lose the ship. That was at least the concern from where I stood.
Well, take me back then, because you've done the research. Was he thinking about leaving?
No.
Was anybody asking him to leave?
From what I understand, Kevin Nash, and maybe you guys can speak this better than I can, but Kevin Nash reached out tentatively to see if there was interest, and Taker said that there was not. And
that goes
that's
loyalty.
news to me, and I think that's the thing. I think when Kevin then went down there, I think they sort of reached out to everybody, sort of.
No, they didn't reach out to me, but they're reaching out to him because he was a heavy-duty cat.
Right.
And I think that was loyalty to Vince. Nobody believed in him down there. He came up here, and Vince hits him with his badass gimmick. He's able to fulfill this gimmick and takes it to the nth level. Here we are talking about it. So to me, that speaks to who he was, his leadership in the locker room, loyalty, bottom line.
That's him as a person, and I think that is one of the things that anybody that knows him outside of just working with him in the ring knows about Take. Is loyalty is probably his number one attribute. He would have gone down with this ship fighting every second of the way before he would have ever thought about going there, because it was about loyalty. To your point, Vince gave him the shot. Vince gave him that opportunity that no one else would give him, and he wasn't about to walk away from it.
He still, all these years later, wants to go out there, mix it up a little bit, and try to pass on a little wisdom and a little knowledge because he wants this place to continue to go. And that's just who he is, and that is never going to change.
Well, part of the watermark when you come into WWE, my first live Raw was against Undertaker. It was right after WrestleMania 12 when he had fought Diesel. You know, they always said a loss to Undertaker is better than 20 wins. And if you can hang with Undertaker for a segment or two, then you had your career made. And very few guys back then would have done that. And he did that consistently over his career. And you have guys like Randy Orton who gave him incredible credit for giving him boost his career. Batista, who really took a giant leap forward after that WrestleMania match with Undertaker. But he's done that his entire career, which is remarkably unselfish.
Well, talk to me about your first endeavor with him out there in the ring.
Well, I tell you, I'd been in Europe working for Autovance for a couple of years, Peter William, and I come over here and my first match I was with Zebekiah, and all of a sudden the light goes out, and I just watched him in that fantastic WrestleMania match, and I just seen you rappel from the ceiling in the match against Bret Hart.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there thinking, I am so far over my freaking head. I don't belong here, and all I can think of is, do I still have Japanese contacts where I can get a job? That's all I'm thinking. And Zeb looks at me, and he can see me having all these doubts, and he goes, just be aggressive, because Zeb knows I'm about to lose his job too. I was scared to death. At that point, I thought, I don't belong here. I'm with the New York Yankees. I was playing Little League before I got here.
Yeah.
I was scared to death. No doubt about it.
How'd it go?
The match went phenomenal. You know, he got me through it. He did everything he possibly could. He made me look like $1 million, and because of that, I ended up getting a little bit of a push, stayed for a while. You know, it's that watermark. If you made it with Undertaker for a segment or two, and he gave you the nod, is that old respect thing, then you were able to hang around a while.
Y'all guys both had Match of the Year candidates with him. I'll never forget the first time I worked with him. I think it was some house show somewhere. I don't remember, but this one they'd smoke up the arena, drop the lights down, the lighters would come up. So I'm over, I went to the ring first. I might have just started being stone cold. I don't remember. I just remember standing on the far corner. Everything went down, the lighters went up, and they started hitting that bong. Here comes Undertaker. And I was just thinking, man, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to work this, you know, I'm going to really take it to town, this guy. And all of a sudden, man, he starts walking to the ring. My mind went absolutely blank.
You get caught up.
Forgot every single thing I want to do. And they ring the bell. I'm like, oh, man, what do I do now?
The worst part was I got him in the corner, and I'm laying the leather to him, and he yells at me.
I was going to say,
oh, you rent?
I was just going to say, I was just going to ask you if he gave you the line.
Oh, my God.
I know they
I
give you money.
Yeah, I owe you money. And I thought, oh, I'm fired. I'm done.
Oh, that is one of my most favorite things to ever hear. I don't even know who we were in the ring with. And he said that to somebody, and I just laughed. And he was like, "Get Sean back in here." I don't know if it was Kevin or whatever, but he's like, "Do I owe you money?" For the love of God, get Sean back in here. And it is just one of my most favorite lines ever. You know, when he's
WrestleMania 25, when I came out of the ring, I was going to have to retire because of injuries, and I got fortunately to pick my opponent Rey Mysterio out of tribute to Eddie Guerrero. Sean, did you get to pick your opponent for your last match? And if you did, why was it The Undertaker?
I didn't get to pick. It was things just sort of falling into place. I was already thinking about it, and then at the same time, you know, Michael Hayes says to me, "What do you think about you going back to back with Taker, and would you be interested in putting your career on the line?" And it was just one of those things that felt right. And you have that match in Houston, and something is just. It's just something you share with each other that you know is just, you know, no amount of time, space, or anything else is ever going to change that. And so when you've been in the ring with somebody and it goes a certain way, you always get closer to that guy. And especially somebody you do a long storyline with, you always sort of, you develop, there's something personal that goes on there, you know, John, that you have forever. And we had such a strange dynamic relationship. When the opportunity was there to, you know, end my career with him, it all felt so right.
Michael Hayes told me this morning that he was the one that came in there, and Undertaker was sitting there lacing up his boots, and Undertaker said, what match are we? And he said, 5th. He said, that just raised this to a new level.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, folk were coming in, we'll sit down, have maybe a little powwow, and lacing up the boots, you know, and so what number are we on? 5th. 5th? Out of how many? And I don't know if it's like 7 or 8 or I have no idea. And he's like, looks over at me. Well, let's just raise this to a new level. And I just thought, well, all right, then we're going to go out there and we're going to tear this somebody. Oh. Nothing more enjoyable than when he's fired up, because that, you know what I mean? It's just like, oh my goodness, this is right up our alley. This is awesome.
The problem came though, Hunter, with you and Randy Orton had this incredible feud, and all of a sudden, the last minute, you had the rug pulled out from under you, no DQ, you get counted out, you lose, and you had to follow this.
Yeah, look. First of all, when I knew what they were going to do anyways, we were doomed anyways unless they went on last, and. I remember just sitting in the locker room. I was getting some tape out of the trainer's room, and I just walked in there, and the match had just started. I sat there and watched it for like maybe 15 minutes. Randy walked in. I was like, dude, we are
You're right thinking, instant classic. Great match, bad timing.
Yeah. And then I like walked down the hall. These two got done, you know. And now I'm going to find them because it's like the greatest match I've ever seen in my life, and I'm going to find them to tell them. But in my mind, like I am so just utterly torn. Like I'm doomed. And yet so happy for these guys. Like it was just, you know.
When somebody rocks a house, they rock a house.
Yeah.
So, you know.
But your impending doom is like knowing that as soon as I get done telling these guys how great they were, I have to go back to my reality, which is doom.
Yeah.
Steve, you're a wrestling historian. The great matches. You had an incredible one at, I guess, WrestleMania 13 with Brett. And Steamboat Savage, Steamboat Flair. Was this the greatest of all time?
Oh, man. It's certainly off the charts.
Greatest of all time. That's so subjective. I mean, this business is.
And I agree 100% with what you're saying. I mean, it is subjective, and it's like, man, it's one of the greatest of all time, certainly. But what is the greatest match of all time? You can't set 10 top guys down, much less 20, and say, all right, y'all all come up with the top match in history. No one's going to agree.
You ask them for the top 20, I guarantee you they put a bunch of the same ones in there. But
there you go.
As far as ironing it down to the single or the top 5, you never.
I think all of us, and you're included, John, I think we all get in this, whatever, to be the greatest, and then we get to an age where we're all at now, and we go, you know what? There was a time, and even if that time's still going on, where we were talked about in the conversation.
Good enough.
Good enough.
Yeah, but also, I mean, just like in the spot that Triple H and Randy were in on that night, to have to follow that, you know. But you're always proud, man, when someone represents. It's like trying to follow Taker and McFoley in the Hell in a Cell. I was in the first blood match with Kane, the main event, and having to follow that, and I was like, same thing as we're going to follow it because we're after them, but that's about as close as we're going to follow it. We can't top it.
You know what, for me, to me, this business is an emotional connection. And the only thing that I can really equate it to sometimes is like music. What's the greatest song of all time, right? It'll resonate with you forever. It's something you feel. It does something to you. You see a match like that, like he had with Taker, it does something to you, you know, emotionally. You connect with it. To you, that could be the greatest match of all time. It's like music, man. It's stuck with you forever.
Also, for me, I like to see this stuff when it's done well.
Yeah,
I get enjoyable. Yeah, I get joy out of that. Doesn't matter to me who's doing it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I mean, obviously, it always helps if it's people you like and you respect, or whatever, or if for them it's a special moment and stuff like that. But when everything goes well and it's done really well, and you certainly when you're someone like us who's done it for a long time, and you go, you know, when you get caught up on it and you enjoy it and you find yourself. Doing like this when they're doing it, that's when you enjoyed it. Yeah, it doesn't matter who's doing it. You just go, gosh. I mean, that's why we got into this, because we liked it, we enjoyed it, we were all fans. And then when it's done really well, you're like that. Yeah.
Before we get too sappy, I can take one more sappy question. You guys had 4 straight WrestleMania matches with Undertaker. And the last you had, Hell in a Cell, you were the referee. I watched it on the plane ride last night. I was just enthralled by the drama of the referee whose best friend is wrestling against a competitor that he greatly respects. Was that your best moment with Undertaker and one of your most proud moments? Obviously most proud moments, but with Undertaker, was that your best moment?
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest moments of my career, there was that moment where the 3 of us stood on the top of the stage and just have that last moment of respect. To me, it's one of the greatest moments of my career.
That was one of the greatest matches in history, and I remember watching that thing back, the drama and the story, and obviously you were so compelling because of your spot that JBL just threw to, but that was off the charts. And here's one of those things that's like, you always want to see someone just rock the house and tear the roof off the building. That match did that. And then the thing at the end when sometimes, there's that line, do you cross it? Is it time for that? Is it okay? Can we let them in that far?
Yeah.
And that was one of those moments that was organic. It was about as real as you could get. It was three badass veterans who just crushed it, grand slam, bases loaded, and that's when it was appropriate. Yeah. And then that's for the fans. But it's a brotherhood, and you've got to really understand that. When you go down the road and you're in the trenches, we have our own deal, our little things and our egos, and we're very competitive. But when you pull something off like that, it's a magical moment.
That to me, and especially when you're not doing it anymore, when you're on the outside looking in, that's the most enjoyable stuff to me. It's like like getting to come back and talk with him now.
But I was the guy on the outside watching. I think you remember I shot you a text half out messages, and I don't text hardly anybody. But I just had to, and I don't know Taker's number. But I just had to send you a text because, dude, that was it was unbelievable.
Yeah, that's the stuff. I don't care if I forget everything the rest of my career. Those are the moments you take with you.
Well, yeah, because that's all the time that you've invested, all your grinding, going up and down the roads, and then, for the fans to buy in because you're doing it all for them. It's what you wanted to do since you was a kid. Now all of a sudden you're on the grandest stage of all, and for those people out there just to reciprocate everything that you're giving them through buying in, being with all the false finishes, the pops, and then the applause. Dude, I'm going to go crazy. I know this is a family-friendly show, but that's what you work for in this business, and that's money, and that's what keeps the audience coming back.
On the next, Legends with JBL. The Undertaker's most famous opponents go in-depth, discussing the exclusive, untold stories from the dead man's fabled career.
And there's all kind of urban legends about Wrestler's Court, but Taker was always the judge, and then Taker would come with some type of punishment. When we start talking about the streak being over.
I was in a production truck. I had a beer in each hand. I was double fisting, waiting to see what was going to happen. Believe that.
You were standing right behind me. What is that?
Should Taker have that last ride, that last match?
He's earned that choice, he's earned that spot, and he's earned the right to be able to say, look, I want to go out in this way.
Welcome to part 2 of Legends with JBL. Again, we are talking about the man and the myth, and sometimes it's hard to separate the two when you're talking about the dead man, the Undertaker. Again, we have put together the greatest star-studded panel in the history of sports entertainment. 23 world championships between these three men. One commonality. That is the Undertaker.
We've talked a lot about the character staying true. There's also a lot of times when we tried to make him laugh. We tried to get him to do the Taker Rooney.
Yeah, we used to do it. That was the biggest thing. It was what was the thing? The claw thing?
Yeah.
That you used to do. Trying to get him sometimes. Well, look, when you're on the road doing this 300 days a year, right? You just sometimes when you're in the smaller places, you got to entertain yourself. Yeah, and trying to get him in some way to smirk or come out of character in a match was like the greatest test, to see if you could do, and you could never crack him. Hardly.
One time he had been out with BSK. There was a couple clicks back in the day. There was the click, and then there was the Canadians, and then there was the BSK, which I never figured out what BSK was.
Backstreet Click.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
See, I'd heard that, but I didn't know if that's true.
I thought it was
Yoko.
Bone Street, because they played the Bones.
Yeah, Bones.
Okay, they all had the tattoos.
Yeah.
Yokozuna, Savio Vega, the Godwin boys, and Rikishi.
Those clicks were a shoot, too, you guys. I wasn't in a click.
But anyway, Undertaker has come in. He's had a good night somewhere. He had a lot of travel, and he came in, and he never sold anything. Ever. And so he's so tired, he doesn't want to sell at TV, so he crawls into one of his own caskets, and he goes to sleep. It's unbelievable. So he sleeps for, he doesn't know how long. 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, and he wakes up and people had gathered around the casket. So when he wakes up, he realizes that there's people there. He sits up, gets out of the casket, and walks off, and never says a word.
Oh my goodness.
Look, you talk about him though. That's a fair point to bring up. Is like you talk about him not selling, and that's mentally, that's not if stress on the road, something would go wrong. He was always at kind of that rock and that foundation. But I remember coming in here in. I guess it was 95 or whatever, and sitting in the locker room, and he had broken his ribs, And like, he really bad. He was all bent over, walking and stuff. And I remember sitting watching a bunch of guys strap a flak jacket to him, a bulletproof vest, and it wouldn't fit him, and just wrapping it around him, and we just all duct taped it onto him and stuff. And then he stood up and got into the Undertaker and went to the ring, and you know, like that every night. You know, it was. When you talk about not selling or being the pro or going the extra mile, man.
Well, the reason he wore the mask in the 94, 95, because he had his eye socket broke, which most people would just taken off. He wore that mask for a while. Then in 2010, he had the other eye socket broke. 2010 also, he walked through the fire at the Elimination Chamber and got himself second-degree burns and never sold a bit of it. Y'all's match, SummerSlam, Highway to Hell. He told me this, you got knocked out, right?
Man, I've never been knocked out in my entire life, and I'm not sitting here trying to say I'm a MMA fighter. I've just never been knocked out. And I've never been in a whole bunch of fights, but I've been through some car wrecks and just never been knocked out. So anyway, the deal is, Undertaker, I'm hitting the ropes. He bends over to give me a backdrop. So when he does, I kick him. I kick the hell out of him. And when he does, he's got a pretty big-ass head. And he brought his head up, hit me right there on the button underneath my chin, and flashed me. I went down, and all of a sudden, I was just looking up at the lights, and this is Madison Square Garden. And Earl Hebner, one of my favorite referees, he goes, "Boy, you all right?" He got that smile on his face. I said, "Where am I?" He goes, "You in the garden, boy." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." So anyway, next thing I know, you know, I'm laying on top of the announce table, and Taker's going to come off the top turnbuckle, and I'm thinking, well, I guess he's really going to jump. And so I really laid there, and I remember the match. I wasn't happy with my performance in that match because after that point, I was kind of just working through the beats. But yeah, got my ass knocked out. But he was, and I wasn't proud of that match because I wasn't able to perform to my standard to reach his level of expectations nor mine.
Well, Taker told me that he had that leg drop off the top rope to the table in case something went wrong, you know, just in case. And when he realized that you were out of it, that's when he pulled it out. He broke his coccyx bone on that table jump.
Well, I'm glad he got something out of it.
Which never.
Hey, let me tell you something.
Never told anybody.
Okay, well, see, I never knew that. But here's the thing, dude. When all of a sudden, you know, you're that guy who's the target or whatever, you know, you're staying. And because that's just what you do. But it is very intimidating. You talk about Taker being an intimidating guy to begin with or imposing. When you put him on the top turnbuckle and he's already 7 foot tall and you're on that announce table, which is about 4 feet off the ground, mister, that is an incredible sight. And then to take that one step and just push off and to come down, that takes some damn guts on his part. Because, mister, you don't practice that landing one time before you move on. Y'all remember back in the day when we went to Kuwait? Yeah. We had these bought shows. We kept going over to the same arena in Kuwait. And,
6 days.
Yeah, 6 days. And it was like, man, they had the full sirens, you know, blowing in front of us and back of us, 2 big-ass tour buses. And all of a sudden you get there and there's like, what, 3,000 people there, 2,500, they were bunched.
But it was a bought show.
Yeah, so we were making our money, but there wasn't nobody there.
Right after the war, Amir Kuwait brought us over there.
And so anyway, there's a big, for some reason, there was a brawl for it all or a battle royal or something. We're all brawling.
There was. I was right beside you when this story happened, yes.
So anyway, I'm doing something with Taker, and he's bent over, and he flicks his hair back, and he gives me those mean eyes. And for some reason, I think I was a little hungover or something, but I just laughed in his face. And because it caught him off guard so bad, he started laughing too. And he immediately threw his head back over his face so you couldn't see him. And that's the only time I ever busted Undertaker in a match, and the only time I've ever seen him break character was that time in Kuwait. Yeah. Oh, my.
Well, when we had the brand split, SmackDown, I used to get fed because I would close the show after TV with Undertaker, and people would feed me jokes to try to break Undertaker's character. And finally, one time, I had one in the bag, and I pulled it out, and I saw him smirking. I thought, I've got him. And I couldn't follow up because I finally had him. I get choke slammed in Tombstone, so I never got any further. But it was a company-wide effort to get him to break character, and he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the night when we were all in the ring with the Taker-Rooney was after the show, and I remember Book was trying to get him to do the spin-a-Rooney, and it just morphed, and Vince went out there, and everybody ended up in the ring trying to do it. Take was just trying to get out of there, and I was a heel at the time, and I remember coming out, and Take said he just knew, like, all right, Hunter's going to get me out of this, like he's going to feed in for something, and then I turned on him, and he was like, I just remember him turning real slow and looking at me, and he go, "You too? You too?" That was a funny, really, really funny night. And again, he still never cracked in that.
No.
Never cracked character, and that adds to the respect that so many guys had. I can't think of anybody, maybe you guys can, maybe Andre the Giant, that people view as respectful as, say, The Undertaker. And Triple H, you had mentioned on your documentary, Thy Kingdom Come, that when you decided to be open about the fact that you were dating Stephanie, the guy you went to was The Undertaker.
Yeah. Well, you know, when we were in the middle of all that, and it was such a huge deal, right? I mean, I was really laying my career out on the line, and just it was, I mean, obviously it's such a huge deal, and the one guy that I went to say, like, hey, can I sit and talk to you about this? We were in the airport. I remember we went to like a Fridays or T-Bones or something like that and sat way in the back, and he and I just sat there for a while and talked about it, you know. But he was the one guy I kind of felt like I know he'll tell me straight exactly what he thinks and exactly how he feels, and he'll have a good kind of pulse on this whole thing and just kind of give me good advice, and he did, you know.
And you said he also outlined, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was going to say, well, he just, I mean, because I mean, that was the one guy, I remember after Montreal.
Yeah.
The one guy we went to Vince about, look, and it's like, we need to know, you know, I need to know how Takers, because there was, you know, a lot of, you know, this guy's upset, that guy's upset, they're leaving, there's nothing, I could care less. I need you to sort of, you know, either tell him where we're at with this or let me know, at least let him know my side of this so that, I mean, he can understand that I'm doing what you asked me to do. And but that was the one guy, you know, I guess the only point I'm trying to make.
How did he feel?
You know what? All I know is, I don't know. I mean, he may know, you know, all the inside stuff now. At the time, all I know is we came into Ottawa that day. I went in to go to Vince. He said he's in there with Taker, and I said, all right. So we waited, came up, and he goes, we're cool. I walked away. I never asked him what he said. That's all I needed to know. I'm good, and that was that. So, and I don't know. I mean, do you know?
Yeah, it's the same basic thing. I think he just, you know.
You'd have to ask him what Vince told him, or whether he told him the whole thing, or. What
I think Vince just told him the facts of the story of the, you know, the situation the company was in, the situation we were in with Brett, and the situation that, you know, Brett and team wanted to have happen, and he couldn't allow that to happen, and here's what I needed to have happen.
I guess I always wonder if he told him that I knew. You know, I mean, that's the part, that's the $1 million question. I don't ever know.
Yeah, my take on it is that's the thing with Taker. He always knew and understood business. Yes. You know, I handled a couple of things in real bad fashion a couple of times when I walked out or whatever. Taker has always maintained just a level business head, and that's one of the things that I really respected about the dude.
And what he told you, said in your DVD, it was very prescient. I mean, what he said basically came true. So it wasn't just a matter you went to him as a matter of respect. He was also a pretty wise guy.
Yeah, no, he always was, and I think that was he always had that. I don't know. He just always had that air. He's laid back. He doesn't let things blow up. I mean, I've seen him get upset and stuff, but he doesn't. He calmly thinks about them and can.
He's not reactionary.
Yeah, he's not reactionary. That's a good way of putting it. He just calmly analyzes the situation and just can say, well, I think it'll play out like this, and here's what you probably should do, and you know, he just always had that great advice, great information, and just a great point of view on everything.
He's always wise enough to think about it first, and then think about, you know, well, okay, the consequences of this, consequences of that. Again, me and Steve very similar. We were more reaction. I was
a little knee-jerk.
I was way reactionary, but I'm just saying at the same point, there were things that Taker went through. I mean, you know, gosh, you think about some of the storylines and WrestleMania matches he's been given over the years. And had you put, certainly me, I can say me, I won't volunteer Steve or anyone else.
Throw me in there too.
But you throw me in there, I go, you got to be kidding. There's just no way. I mean, and he.
Dude, 25 years. I mean, just like you said at the beginning of the show.
All you
never blew up, or certainly never.
All you got to say is El Gigante.
I didn't want to mention any names. I wasn't going to throw anybody
But he worked through it.
Right, no, I mean, like, look, and that's the thing, right? But you would have never, like, I wasn't here then, but I guarantee you, nobody in that locker room heard him go, this is crap, I don't want to do this.
And you look at what he's done over the years with so many guys that he worked with and he made. He took great pride, but that was a bit unheard of back then. But that's one of the reasons that he was the judge of Wrestlers Court, right?
Yeah.
Which You filled in for Taker one time when Teddy Long got accused of me and Ron Simmons of being too cheap.
Yes, well, so there wasn't much defense on that one.
There wasn't much defense.
Yeah, no, but yeah, Taker was always the judge and jury pretty much on that because of all the reasons we just talked about.
Because everybody trusted his judgment, and he was fair. You knew it was going to.
There's all kind of urban legends about wrestlers' court, but Taker was always the judge. Godfather was the bailiff. And Taker, you come with this kangaroo court, but it was a lot of fun. But there was almost ribbon on the square, too. And then Taker would come with some type of punishment or whatever it was that he saw fit. But
it's funny, there was a lot of ribbon on the square. There was usually a good moral to the end of wrestler's court, right? Like everybody kind of, I think the young guys especially, learned something coming out of it, like of how they needed to act in the locker room, because all joking aside, it was offensive or whatever, you know.
So the good morals came out of it, but also morale was lifted because, I mean, sometimes you get on some grinds on the road, man.
Yeah.
And that was always a moment of levity when you'd have a damn, and it's ridiculous, and you weren't worth a you're great, but you're right.
biased.
I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah.
But it was just, and so you come out of that, it's like, oh, man, I've been on the road for 17
I'm not one of the as a moderator, as a lawyer.
I'm beat to hell, but now I feel good.
Yeah.
So let's go down the road.
Everybody got together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody was in the same room for a while, too.
But I also think that's one of the things that, you know, I think Taker had the ability to, one, be serious all the time and to be that rock and that stoic guy, but also when there needed to be that moment of levity, when he needed to let everybody up, when he needed to give everybody that night to just blow off some steam. He had a great pulse on everybody's kind of mentality.
Yeah, and along that point, he never said, hey, I'm the leader here.
No, that's right.
He never did that.
Never.
He just kind of assumed that position, and people just kind of put him there.
Yeah, I don't even know if he assumed anything.
I mean, he didn't assume anything. I mean, he just was.
Yeah, he just did.
Everybody just gravitated toward him as
did who he was, and then all of a
The
sudden,
rest of us were
it just
such dopes. We were looking for somebody that had a. Is anybody here that's mature enough to do this?
He is. Yeah, but the dude has a great sense of humor. I mean, he's not shucking and jiving and laughing all the time because it's hard to make him smile about anything. It's a shoot. But he'll put over good material, but that's just who he is.
Yeah, he
goes back
loyal.
into the gimmick.
There's the time that you got the gold medalist choked out on an airplane. You put you knock off half a Taker's ear in a match, and I believe it was Manchester, England. Is that right? With the knee brace. So Taker gets
me, you, and Taker, right?
That's right.
I can't.
We
Taker,
your knee brace caught him in the ear.
Oh.
And we had to go. So we had to get on a plane. We'd done it was like
there was a curfew,
insurrection, or we had to get on the plane and be out of there at a certain point in time, where we could not leave England. So Taker's ear was like hanging on by like a piece. And
it was from your knee brace.
Yeah, your knee brace just caught him. He was tied up in the ropes or something, and your knee brace caught him. And like me and Taker literally went at the airport and like just washed off in the sink in our gear and got on the plane. And Taker, like we all trying to hold his ear on and get it to stop bleeding on the flight. And they had a plastic surgeon meet him there to sew his ear back on. But it was
on that flight, Kurt Angle and Vince McMahon are just fooling around, just having some fun. Taker is in and out of consciousness, and he looks up and he sees Kurt Angle wrestling with Vince right in front of him, and he gets up and chokes Kurt Angle out. So, the Olympic gold medalist. Kurt tells it in his book in a very funny way. Kurt's last thing was not to tap out, was, we're playing. We're playing.
I remember
Taker
It's a word.
Kurt was on top of Vince, and Taker just walked right over top of him and just put Kurt out.
So technically, you got the boss. You got Kurt Angle tapped out.
Yeah, but I didn't remember that story. I remember walking and washing off, but I couldn't remember the errant knee to the ear. It probably was a working punch.
Well, look, if you've ever seen Take's ears, the fact that you would hit it at some point in the time in matches, and given the things are about that long, I'm the one to talk. I mean, but
So jumping forward, when we start talking about the streak being over. I guess all things have to end. I guess they don't have to, but invariably they do. And wasn't there when Bruno lost the title in Madison Square Garden, but that's the only thing I think I could compare it to. I was doing the commentary. Michael Cole was ready to say, and the streak continues. And all of a sudden he says the streak is over. And we look at each other and we can't believe it. 75,000 people can't believe it. When you guys saw that, Sean, you were there, I believe. What were you thinking?
Well, no, he was standing right behind me. I went, what is that?
One thing Taker regrets is the same thing you regretted at that SummerSlam was he got knocked out. He doesn't remember anything from 3:30 that day until 4:30 the next morning.
Then I say he should deny it.
No, so then that makes me feel better because right before he went out there, I hadn't seen him in a while. I said, hey, dude, I do a podcast. I don't know if you want to be on it. That's straight up shoot. Be on a stupid podcast.
Hey, remember when you and I used to cheesily promote things in like a shilling kind of a way? Mr. Broder's Skull Ranch hat over
I'm
there.
not promoting.
I don't have any idea.
How about
what
these
he's
Rocky Luke right here? No, it's a straight up shoot, man. Here comes me, dip. I didn't know. He said, dude, you want to be on a podcast? And, he agreed to be on it. So maybe we'll see him sometime in the future.
Oh, my God.
Oh, but here's the thing. My reaction, I was in a production truck. I had a beer in each hand. I was double fisting, waiting to see what was going to happen. Believe that.
Your kids don't try this at home.
Don't try that.
You mean about waiting to see what happened? Like if you were going to drink both at the same time? Or?
No, I was just in there. I was glued to the set, and all of a sudden going into the finish, man, all of a sudden, man, I was like a dude that they kept showing on the front row. His eyes got that big, and my eyes were that big, standing there like, what WTF just happened? Because, man, I'm a big Brock Lesnar fan. The dude's got it going on right now, and I knew the kid was money when he showed up here in 2000, went to OVW, made his debut in 2002. I knew he was money, but, man, the streak to me was just something, I don't know, dude. I was a fan of the streak. I just couldn't see it being broken. They broke it for all the right reasons with what Brock Lesnar has ascended to. I will say that, but I wanted to keep the thing intact.
To me, let's go back and talk about the streak, because I think you could talk about it ending, and everybody has their opinion on it and all that, but having it in general in the first place, over all those years, when you look at it in that sense, and I don't think there's one time in any of that that you would say, I don't know, maybe maybe that would have been a different finish there. Right. You know what I'm saying? It's just when we talk about his longevity, to go to WrestleMania every year in that dominant fashion, where that was what was expected to happen. When I wrestled him at 17, there was no talk at that point in time or discussion of the streak.
Right.
It really wasn't a discussion point yet. It was just kind of a given. It was just there, and it was never questionable as to whether or not it would just continue or not. It was the Undertaker. Of course, you're gonna go up against the Undertaker at WrestleMania.
I was always curious. At what point did somebody? I mean, I would assume that it didn't start out in his first WrestleMania like, hey, let's give him this long streak. I mean, so at what point did somebody go, hey, do you realize he's actually never been beat at WrestleMania? So what? I've always been curious to that. At what point?
It's funny.
I guess creatively somebody said, hey, we've never beaten him. Let's start making this.
At 17, I don't recall that ever being, at that time, it ever being a topic of conversation. Oh, well, he's won every year, or that even being a factor. It was just, it was never thought about.
I didn't know the option was there to beat it.
Yeah.
Else I really went to town on that. I didn't know that was an actual real viable option.
I don't know that it became like a huge deal until maybe a couple of years after that.
Well, but also, man, when you're in the trenches, and I was watching from afar because I was already done, but I mean, really guys like us don't pay attention to stuff like that.
Yeah.
Someone from the inside, and they all of a sudden they bring it to light because we're just like doing it.
Yeah.
So sometimes I always said, like, you're so far in the forest you can't see the trees. And so that's where I think I was, and maybe you guys were. You don't even think about it.
Now, when we were going into Hell in the Cell, I remember Taker coming to me and he goes, but somebody just brought up a point to me that out of like 19 Hell in the Cells or something, he and I had been in like 17 of them, or something ridiculous stat like that. But he had no knowledge of it. I had no knowledge. I was like, you're kidding me. Wow. And we started talking about it like, yeah, that is a lot, isn't it? Just you never thought about that stuff as you were going along in your day-to-day,
Right. I bet he didn't think about it either.
I'm sure he didn't. Sean, you had your last match. Undertaker was blessed. I mean, you talk about great champions. Like after Frank Gotch retired in 1913 to Lou Thez, there was Ed Strangler Lewis. There was never anything memorable. There wasn't a guy to fight. Kind of like Marciano, never really, they thought, had a guy to fight. Taker has fought everyone, which has enhanced that 25-year career. Should Taker have that last ride, that last match? And if he does, what would you see him in that last match?
My goodness.
I mean, should it be a mania? Should it be, okay, this is Taker's last match? Or should he just kind of ride off in the sunset and you never know if he's coming back?
You know what? I mean, that's a question, and I guess my feeling would be nobody's going to know that better than him. The way this line of work is now, and I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but if you sort of leave that question mark out there, is that good for you? You know what I mean? Or is that bad? I mean, I got to be honest, there's so much, at the time I was doing this stuff, I thought I had a pretty good handle on it. I've been away for 5 years, and I don't think I haven't answered anything. I don't know. I don't.
I always think whenever somebody asks to me those questions about how somebody should, like, how do you feel he should end his career? I shouldn't have an opinion on that. That's his. That opinion is his. How does he want it to end? And does he want to continue? Does he want to have that one last match? How does he want that? Not everybody gets to make that choice. I think he's earned that choice. He's earned that spot, and he's earned the right to be able to say, look, I want to go out in this way. I want to have this happen, and I want to do that, and then I want to call it a day.
For sure. I mean, for what it's worth,
it's fade away.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think I agree. I think he ought to have the call. And I can say, at least speak to this experience, is that when you're, able to have the biggest difference between 14 and my last one, whatever it was, 26, is that
26.
Having the option, to say it's your last one.
On your terms.
Heck of a lot better than not. I mean, for me personally, from a peace standpoint, I could say I enjoyed the second one a ton better,
There's finality, at least for you.
Correct.
But speaking of finality, I would go to it like this. WrestleMania 19 was my last match. Nobody knew that at the time, but me and a couple of guys in the company.
You knew at the time?
Yeah, I knew. I knew that was it. And it was a very, very emotional day. And so all these years later, hey, man, it's just the way it ended. Some people say, hey, yeah, you should do another match, decide whatever. No, man, I'm done with it. I got out of my system. I think Taker, whether he decides to go out with a match or just announces his resignation. I mean, it's something much more cooler than that. This is where he rides off into the sunset, or it's rest in peace, and he's at peace with everything he's accomplished. And then there's that just production. You smoke up the place, or I'm not going to give you the creative, but I think it's a call that he makes. Whether it's a match or it's a send-off, I think that he's earned the right, and the people have bought in so long that they deserve to know, hey, if this is it, and just he announces his retirement. On the other side of that, you want to say, oh, well, you never say never in this business because we might need you back. But I think there needs to be some ceremony, or whether it's a match. But I think it's his call. And obviously something that he would obviously confer very closely with Vince, because, they're glued together on this deal.
Yeah. And when you say that, I mean, I agree. I think it would be, from a fan standpoint, I mean, like as we're just sitting here talking about it, certainly better than the question mark, or at least smarten them up. Yeah, at least let them know that.
You bought in this guy for so many years. Yeah, right. I'd like to know.
For sure,
right.
Yeah.
Sure.
In finality, lasting legacy, 25 years. I mean, that's phenomenal. I mean, you look at a guy like George Foreman, who came back and won the title at such an old age, but he wasn't continuous. I mean, look at Sugar Ray Robinson, 8 straight years of undefeated, 43-51. And you look at some of these incredible records. There's nothing like this. Stan Musial, Willie Mays, 24 years of straight all-star appearances, but nobody's done it at that level for 25 years. What do you think, each one, if you don't mind, the legacy of The Undertaker is going to be left? 50 years from now, people are going to remember you guys. People are going to remember guys like Andre the Giant and Bruno Sammartino. Thanks a lot to the WWE Network, and now WWE is the library of sports entertainment. People are going to remember The Undertaker for a very long time. What do you think that legacy is?
To me, I think he's had one of the absolute best careers in the history of professional wrestling / sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it. He leaves with respect. He leaves with a body of work that anybody would be enviable of. He's made people, he's been a constant through all the storms that this place has weathered through his tenure here. And he truly is the American badass, and there'll never be another guy that's like him. And he is one of the all-time greats, without question.
Hard to say. I can still walk into this dressing room and feel okay, because there's that, I still see that one constant face all the time. You know what I mean? When there's a day that I walk in here and it's not there, don't know that I'll be able to walk back in here anymore, and at least, and feel like it's home, or I'm comfortable, or anything. You know what I mean? He's the last of the Mohicans, man. He's outlasted all of us. So I mean, it's for me, it's that, you said steadfastness. I mean, it's just something that's always been there.
So for me, you know, like you talk a lot about athletics and career longevity and all those things, but then you mentioned sports entertainment. You know, to me, it's bigger than just sport. To me, it all boils down to one thing, from fans across to the talent to everybody that's ever been in the ring with him or watched him perform. It all comes down to the most respected man ever in this business. It all boils down to respect. And that is the thing. To me, that's his legacy. The most respected man ever to lace up his boots.
Yeah, and that's what you hear across the board. And I don't think we've ever had a panel that's been more esteemed than the one we have here. You know, you have 23 world championships among you three. And when you mention all the great categories of greatest matches, greatest drawing ability, greatest in-ring performers, you three are all on somebody's list at the very top. And for that, I want to say to you guys, thank you very much for what you've done, for what you continue to do. It's been a phenomenal journey of The Undertaker, and all three of you were all integral parts of what he's done. And I don't think there's ever going to be anything else like him. There's not going to be anything else like you guys either. So thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you for the panel, and it's Undertaker Week all week on the WWE Network.